Hello students. So students, hi Prem. So students, this 20% off on the CA subscription. Today is the last day, students, as you all know. So 20%, this is for students for all the CA subscription category, whether it is a foundation or intermediate or final CA, for all the 3 level students. That is the point. So students, like primarily, if the subscription students has been taken today, that is the last date, 20% discount would be given on this particular subscription price. The referral code, students, obviously you have to put a code, a referral code, and that referral code would be CADS. Okay. So students, you can tell to your friends, your colleagues, relatives, juniors who are in the different level of the CA course to take up the subscription offer. 20% discount that they will get it by using the code CADS. One thing which is there, students, the range of the course is for all the students who have got their attempt in November 22, May 23, November 23, May 24. So for all the range, the course is available, whether it is a fast track or whether it is a regular batch. So all the range, this course is available to them. So today is the last day, students, so tell them to act fast and take the benefit of this particular subscription. So let's start now, students. Prem, shall we start now? So students, we will now start with the assessment procedure. In this case, last lecture I have completed up till students. Last lecture, students, I have completed up till your non-resident taxation, transfer pricing. Those things are covered. Now I'm going to move to the next particular part, which is your assessment procedure. So now the things would be like this, that students, assessment procedure I'm going to do, appeals, revision, rectification, those topics also I'll do. Penalty, I'll not do it. Penalty, students, I'll do penalty, TDS, TCS and charitable trust I'll do in the end. End means, students, I'm trying to complete your syllabus by 20th of July. So that would be then. So therefore, these 3 topics I'll do it that time. In the meantime, students, after assessment, appeals, rectification, then I'll switch to PGBP. PGBP, MAT, alternate tax regime, taxation of dividends. So those are the topics which we are going to discuss across it. Okay. And then after some small topics, and the last would be penalties, TDS, TCS and charitable trust. So that's the flow of the topic, students. Fine. Shall we start now, students? Perfect. Let's start. Page number would be, that is always a challenge, isn't it? This particular thing you have to keep scrolling and all. Any idea page number of Prem? Or the question number? That is page number 249. Students, all of you will take page 249. And question number 224. The hand is paining, friends. Meantime, Prem, keep reading that question. Just a second, friends. I just take that. So, students, we'll do it till recovery proceedings, huh? Till recovery proceedings. Now, students, this is about the penalty part. As you may be aware, the first one, if you see over here, just a second. Now, if you all see, students, over here, question number 224. So just a second. Sorry, students. Okay, so students, now this particular part of the penalty which is there, as such, this is a penalty topic, as you all are aware, but still, I'll just quickly discuss this particular part with all of you. Students, as you all know, the statement of financial transaction, I think all of you are aware of that, SFT, very popularly known as. So students, if you know the due date of filing of this SFT is 31st of May of the financial year. The due date of filing of the SFT, students, is 31st of May of the financial year, students. Isn't it? So that becomes the due date of statement of filing of the SFT. So in this context, students, herein when you see about this particular part on the SFT, there is an imposition of the penalty which is also being there. And the penalty particular provision which has been there in this context, which will be applicable if you miss the due date of 31st of May. If you students miss the due date of 31st of May. So how primarily we will look into it. So this is precisely how the things has to be looked upon. You will be required to pay the penalty starting from 1st of June of the next financial year, because your due date, students, happens to be 31st of May. Since your due date happens to be 31st of May, the penalty will kick in From which date shouldn't the penalty will kick in? From 1st of June of the relevant financial year. 1st of June of the relevant financial year, the penalty will kick in. All of you agree to this one? Now, in that particular context, students, the penalty amount which is there in this context, so in the penalty amount which has been there in this particular context, this particular penalty which is there would be rupees 500 per day. Now, the 500 rupees per day will be up till which particular date? So, the 500 rupees per day will be up to the time which is allowed in the notice, students. The time which is allowed in the notice which has been given to the SSC to file the AIR. So, even the department definitely will be giving them the notice, and the notice will require them to file the AIR. The AIR has to be filed within the time allowed in that particular notice. So, therefore, this 500 rupees per day penalty will be starting from the 1st of June immediately after the due date of filing of the AIR till what? Till the date which is the time which is allowed to file the AIR. Is that clear to all of you, students? Now, if supposingly you have filed the AIR after the time allowed in the notice which has been given to you, then after that, from the expiry of the time allowed, in this case, the penalty that would be applicable would be rupees 1000 per day. So let's look upon to this example which has been there. A private bank has not, students, a private bank has not filed its statement of financial transaction or reportable account in relation to the specified financial transaction for the financial year 21-22. For the financial year 21-22. A notice was issued by the prescribed income tax authority on 1st of October 2022. So that is the date when the notice was being issued by the prescribed income tax authority on 1st of October, students, on 1st of October 2022. Requiring the bank to furnish the statement by 31st of October 2022. Requiring the bank to furnish what? The statement by 31st of October 2022. Is that clear? So now, students, what happens? If you see over here, the financial year, students, is financial year 21-22. Fine. 31st of May is the game. May 2022 is the due date to file the ROI. AIR. Due date to file the AIR. Isn't it, students? Now, herein, what happens? The notice has been issued requiring them to file by 31st of October. So, I'll just write here, students, also 1st of June, because 1st of June would be the date from which the penalty will kick in. Now, as it can be seen from this particular discussion, this is 1st of June till, students, 1st of June till 31st of October. That is the time allowed. Which is the time allowed in the notice? Time allowed in the notice. And finally, students, when the return has been filed, actually 15th of November 2022. So 15th of November 2022, the return has been filed in an actual sense. 15th November, students, can you see that? This is the time when the return has been filed in an actual sense, students. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Every one of you. Fine. Now, when the interest will begin, let's have a look. When the penalty will start, and what is the amount of penalty? So, penalty starts from this date, students, which you can see from this date to this date. The penalty, students, will be at rupees. So the penalty would be at rupees 500 per day. 500 per day. And after this, students, from this date to this date, students, the penalty would be at rupees 1000 per day. The penalty would be at rupees 1000 per day. Is that clear to all of you, students? So at 500 per day versus at 1000 per day. So in that situation, students, you can calculate the amount of penalty which has been calculated. Just keep that always in mind. Have you all copied on this one, students? Can we proceed further then? Prem? Fine, students. So now if you see the total amount, 153 days into rupees 500. So the quantum of penalty, students, is 76,500, and 15 days into what? Into 1000. The amount of penalty is 15,000. So the total penalty for late filing of the AIR, the total penalty, students, then for late filing of the AIR is how much? You can see that, students. Is how much? You can see that, students. Perfect. So this is what would be the total particular penalty, 91,500. Okay, so these are the, now students, now they are targeting this as an MCQ question. These days they are now targeting this to be an MCQ question. Just keep that in mind. Now with that, students, the another penalty which is about the one is about the non-filing of the ROI, non-filing. This penalty, students, just put across the section number correctly. Another is 271 FAA. Students, this is for when the AIR is filed having defect in the same. So if you file a defective AIR, students, if you file a defective AIR, then in that particular case, what happens? The penalty would be levied under section 271 FAA. By the way, students, I must tell you that you are allowed to correct the defect, students. You are allowed to correct the defect. By what time, students, you are allowed to correct the defect? You are allowed to correct the defect within 10 days. Can you see that? Within 10 days, you are allowed to correct the defect. Okay, so therefore, there is a case of a revise AIR that you can file within the 10 days period. Therefore, if the defect is not cured within the 10 days period and the defect is cured after the 10 days period, students, after the 10 days period, students, in that particular case, we will say that the penalty would be levied, would be a flat rupees 50,000. So this is a flat 50,000 rupees. So nothing per day kind of a thing over here. Okay. Shall we proceed further, students? Now, students, this coffee grower ROI and all, you can just read. It's a simple one, students. ROI part, students, you please read it, students. ROI thing, because it's a simple thing, so I'm not touching upon the ROI side. Okay. So these simple things, students, which are there, so we can at least save some time. Okay. Fine, students. Now, herein, students, you take directly the question of, take this question 232. No objection on time barred. Security notice. Scrutiny notice. Not security. Scrutiny notice. Status of the assessment order, students. Status of the assessment order. Let's have a look to this one. Students, in this context. So if you see over here, in this regard, students, if you all see in this context, in this regard, remember what happens, by what time you can give the notice of scrutiny? Any idea, students? Up till by when you can give the notice of scrutiny? What is your take, students, on that? Up till by when you can issue the notice of scrutiny is the question to all of you. Up till by when you can issue the notice of scrutiny, students? Quickly. Any clue, students, on this one? So the notice of scrutiny, students, can be given up to 6 months from. Earlier it was 6 months. Now it has been revised to 3 months. Finance Act 2021. That is one of the important points, students. Prem, it has changed. Earlier it was 6 months. Now those days are gone. FA 2021, you can see it is 3 months. And that is the reason why, students, I have taken this particular question itself. So if I just tell you this one, students, like for you all previous year, as you all are aware, students, let's have a look. So students, for you all, the previous year. So the previous year, students, is this. Previous year 21-22. Okay, and then there would be an assessment year 22-23. So students, in this case, and this would be the assessment year. So the ROI would be filed when? Let's take a case of a company, students. When the company would be required to file the ROI? What is the due date so far as a company is concerned? So the due date, students, so far as company is concerned. Any clue on that one, students? It is, there are 3 due date, students. One is for transfer pricing. One is for the normal SSE, like an individual, those who don't have a tax audit implication. And the last category, students, is 31st of October. In this regard. So students, herein in this context, (30th of November) and the third one, students, 3 due dates, 31st July 2022. Fine. Now what happens, students, over here? Once the ROI is filed, so this is for the ROI, students. Once the ROI is filed, after that, maybe let's say the notice of scrutiny has been given to you. Can you tell me by when? By when the notice of scrutiny can be served? Up to by what time, students, the notice of scrutiny can be served, students? Any idea on this one, students? Up till by when the notice of scrutiny can be served, students? Quickly. 3 months from the end of the financial year. So therefore 3 months from the end of the financial year in which the ROI is filed. So if you count the date, students, in this particular case, if you all count the date, students, in this particular case as 3 months from the end of the financial year in which the ROI is filed, this 3 months, students, will become what? So 3 months will become what? 3 months from the end of the financial year in which the ROI is filed. So the financial year is 22-23 in which the ROI is filed. So therefore this is a due date for service. So service of notice of scrutiny 143.2. So that can be given by 30th of June 2023. So here, students, if you see, this particular limit is for the service part. Agree, pay me on this one. This particular time limit is for what? It is meant for the service of the notice of scrutiny. So no notice of scrutiny shall be served after the expiry of this 3 months from the end of the financial year. So it becomes 30th of June 2023. 30th of June 2023. Now you tell me, students, in this case, supposingly the notice was being issued, the question that is very popularly asked by the ICI is this, that the notice of scrutiny, I'm just writing NOS, notice of scrutiny was issued on, students, say 29th of June 2023. The notice of scrutiny was issued on 29th of June 2023. Okay. And what, students? And it was being served finally. It was actually served on 1st July, CA day. So on CA day, students, in fact, on CA day it was being served. So now you tell me, students, in this case, on CA day it is getting served. Is this notice of scrutiny a valid NOS? Please tell me then. And the answer is no. Because the law of 143.2 requires that the service of notice of scrutiny should take place within 3 months from the end of that particular financial year. The service should take place. Did you all got this one? So the law is all about the service. Is that clear to all of you? The law is all about the service, students. Fine, students. So it is invalid. Can we say it is invalid? Yes. But if... Now the question is, don't comment right now, students, that it is invalid. Hold on. Ask question. And what is the question that has been asked? Whether the SSC has raised the objection, towards the validity of the NOS. whether the SSE has raised the objection towards the validity of the notice of scrutiny before the AO. This is the question that needs to be answered. Before the AO. This is the question that needs to be answered. Now the answer can be either yes or no, students. Answer can be either yes or no. If the answer is yes, then the notice is invalid. But if the answer is no, and the SSE has cooperated during the proceedings, cooperated during the proceedings, then students what? Then the notice of scrutiny shall deem to be deemed to be valid. Now this deeming fiction for making it valid is coming from section 292BB. Section 292BB creates a deeming fiction and make this notice of scrutiny to be a valid NOS. To be what? A valid NOS, students. Is that clear to all of you? Fine, students. Have you all completed up till here? See, what he can do is that at least he should raise the objection, Prem. Once he raises the objection, thereafter, then I can keep on cooperating. But I need to first raise the objection. So you can always say that, look, I have raised the objection, but then I still cooperated because I don't wanted to face the wrath of the assessing officers. I didn't want it to face the anger of the AO, so I cooperated. But before cooperation, I raised the objection. So if you can show that you have raised the objection, that is sufficient enough to render this notice as invalid. That is sufficient enough to render that notice as invalid. Did you all got this one, students? All of you. And that exactly is the point, students. Fine. So this is how the things has to be looked upon, students. And let's take the discussion further now. So this is what this question is all about, which is question number 232. 232, students. Now let's take question number 233. Question 233, CBDT power to condone the delay in filing of the ROI. Students, you may be aware that what happens is this, that what happens, students, is this, that supposingly, like for example, here one example has been given to you, that as you can see that if there is a loss, the loss return has to be filed within the due date of section 139(1). The loss return has to be filed within the due date of section 139(1), which implies this, that a loss return filed after the due date of section 139(1), what will happen to that? For the loss return which is filed after the due date of section 139(1), what will happen to that? We will say that such loss return, students, what will happen to that? Indeed, such loss return, students, we will say that it will be invalid. It will be invalid or may be lapsed, as you can say that way. Perfect. But supposingly, students, there was some genuine reason why there was 1 day delay only, say for example. And what is 1 day delay? Maybe there could be reason, maybe whatever local issue, power failure, this and that. Like for example, the internet was suspended and all. So that facility was not there, so I could not upload it, students. So all these reasons could be there, and by virtue of which I was not in a position to upload my return on 30th of September, and thereby this 31st of October, and thereby what has happened? You are now saying that this is a lost return, and because it is a loss, you will say that it is an invalid return, and now you are saying that because it is an invalid return, it will get lapsed, and that will be a hardship for me. So what is a remedy available to me? Technically speaking, no remedy. But now if at the end of the day, the administration has to be done by a department. So if the department agrees in this particular case, students, then will you be getting the relief if the department agrees? So it is up to the department, students. If the department agrees, I am safe. If the department agrees, students, I am safe. So at what level you have to reach to the department, which level you need to make an application to the department, now that will depend. That will depend, students. You'll say, sir, means? It means that, students, it ultimately depends upon, be careful, students. It ultimately will depend upon, supposingly the claim is how much? What is the value of claim? If the claim is up to rupees 10 lakhs, then you need to make an application for this relief, for this waiver, for the delay. The claim should go to whom, students? The claim should go before quickly, it has to go before the CIT, Commissioner of Income Tax. If the claim is between 10 lakhs to 50 lakhs, if that is the kind of a claim that you have, then you will have to go towards the CCIT, the Chief Commissioner of Income Tax, or the Principal Chief Commissioner of Income Tax. And last but not the least, but if the claim is more than 50 lakhs, then the stakes are really very high, and now you are supposed to put up the claim before whom? Before the CBDT. Is that clear to all of you, students? So in this question, students, here the stake was of 51 lakhs. Can you see this? And there is a belated return with a 51 lakh stakes, and it is a belated return. Tell me then, to whom that, students, with 51 lakhs, tell me then to whom you are going to make an application then. So the application, students, would be made before the CBDT. Did you all got this one? Before the CBDT. Okay, so this is what it is, students. So you can just see the analysis, the conclusion directly. Students, just read this analysis conclusion quickly and let me know. Let's proceed further, students then. So let's start, students, taking it further. Now then, now this is about the power of the income tax officer, students. Be careful on these things. These are the important particular theory questions. The power of the income tax officer, students, as you all know, there are various powers which are available. Students, there are various powers which are available to the income tax authority. One of the very popular one happens to be section 131. One of them happens to be, students, section 131. And therefore, students, what shall we say in this context? We will say, students, in this particular context that section 131 is a very unique thing. Section 131, students, is very unique thing, students. And what is so unique about that? That here, students, you can call for the attendance of any person. Here you can call for the attendance of any person, students. And accordingly, along with him, you can also call for his books of accounts. Along with him, he can also call for his books of accounts or the documents. Okay. Now, what will happen thereafter, students, in this context? What will happen thereafter, students, in this particular context? Would be what, students? That in such particular case, once you call for the attendance of that particular person, so what happens is that you can also impound his books. You can tell him that, look, I want your statement. And that statement, by the way, I should tell you one more thing, students. That statement which has been given by that person, are you aware of that? That statement, students, is given under the oath. Are you aware of this particular aspect, students? Those statements, students, are given under the oath. This is very big thing. Giving a statement under the oath, students, is a really big thing. Because then whatever primarily you say, that particular statement can be used against that will be used as an evidence. So in 131, what happens, students, is that you can issue commission, summons and you can enforce the attendance of that particular person. And once that person, in this case, attends, you can take his statement. You can take his statement, and that statement that you are taking, students, is the statement, students, that you are taking is a statement under the oath. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. The statement that you are taking, students, is a statement under the oath. Is that clear, students? Fine. That would be the statement under the oath, which will be used as an evidence. Which will be used as what? As an evidence, students. Now, in this case, student, before we start doing this question, one particular point which is there. In this case, the assessee, before that, I told you about the books of accounts also. The books of accounts and the other documents. Those books of accounts and documents which are called upon, that can be impounded. That power to impound those books of accounts or document is available. That power to impound the books of accounts or document is available, students. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Fine. Now in this context, let's read the question. The question says that 15 days, the date frame is for 15 days. So for a period of 15 days, the books can be impounded. For a period of 15 days, students, the books can be impounded. Is that clear to all of you? All of you are clear with this one? And that exactly is the point. Okay. Let's take the discussion further. See now what they have said. Now, even that, by the way, Prem, I should say that beyond 15 days, if you want to keep the books, beyond 15 days, do you know what will happen? You need to take the approval from the higher authority. And who is the higher authority? The Director General of Income Tax, or the Chief Commissioner of Income Tax, or the Commissioner of Income Tax. These are the higher authority with whom you need to take the approval. If you intend to retain, students, if you intend to retain the books for the period of more than 15 days. If you intend to retain the books for a period of more than 15 days, students. Is that clear to all of you? Now, let's have a look, students, on this question 234, what it says. So, it says over here that the Director General of Income Tax, after getting the information, recap on authorities means, what I told was that they need to take the approval from the higher authority. The higher authority happens to be, if the assessing officer wants to retain the books of accounts, then he needs to take up the approval from the higher authority, which would be Director General of Income Tax, Chief Commissioner of Income Tax, Director of Income Tax, Commissioner of Income Tax. These are the higher authority. Okay. Now then, let's see this particular question. The Director General of Income Tax, after getting the information that Mr. Mogambo is in possession of unaccounted cash of rupees 50 lakhs, issued orders by invoking powers vested in him as per section 131(1)(a) for its seizure. Fine. So here, students, what they are doing in section 131, they are doing the seizure of cash. So students, the question to all of you therefore is the order of seizure, students, of cash issued by whom? Issued by, students, the Director General of Income Tax, correct? If not, does the Director General of Income Tax have any other power to seize such cash? Tell me then, students. Under 131, does the DGIT who is exercising the power, can they seize the cash? Answer is no, Prem. In 131, you can only impound the books of accounts. Only books of accounts can be impounded. By the way, let me tell you this. If you want to seize things like cash, things like asset, then those can only be done in exercise of the power under section 132. And what is that? The power of search. The power of search. So it is only that ultimate power, students, where you can seize the assets, valuables, cash, books, everything. Those can be seized. Whereas in all the remaining provision, you don't have the power to seize, except you can maximum do in couple of section. What is that maximum that you can do? In those couple of section, you can impound the books of accounts. And which is that couple of sections which I'm talking about it? One happens to be section 131 and another happens to be, student, section 133A, which is survey. Survey, students. Survey, students. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. So here in this case, so you can just make a note of this one. Impound of books, whereas seize assets, cash, books or other valuables. So this is under 131 and 133A. This is under 132 and 132A. Is that clear to all of you? Fine, student. Perfect. So students, here directly write herein. So if supposingly you have to answer this question finally, that what is the option which is available, students? What is the option which is available? If this is what has to be answered finally, students, then what is that you will say? If this is what has to be answered finally, that what is the option which is available, then 131 definitely is not the option to seize the cash. Do you all agree? 131 is definitely not the option to seize the cash. The option that is available to seize the cash is only under section 132. Is only under section 132. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Now let's look upon to the other section now. The next question, students, is question 235. Is question number 235. Students, as the list goes, we have done now 131. Now there is another section 133. Now this section 133 is giving the assessing officer the power to call for the information. This section, students, give the assessee, the AO, the power to call for the information, students. This is a really big thing. The power to call for the information, students. Now, as per this particular provision, the power to call for the information when it is provided, be careful, students, over here then. When you're talking about the power to call for the information, students, again, this section 133, this notice can be given to any person Any person. In fact, for example, your case is there in the assessment. Do you know what they can do? By virtue of 133, they can give the notice to your bankers also, students. The notice can be given to your bankers as well and ask them for the statement of transactions. So they can directly give a notice to your bankers and ask for the statement of transaction. That level of power is there, students, under section 133. That level of power is there, students, under section 133. And accordingly, they have to oblige. Now, the bank cannot say, no, I will not give. How can I give the details of our account holder? They will have to give, because that kind of a power is available before the income tax department. And if there is a failure on their part, then if they are still adamant, no, as per our banking particular policies, we don't give the information to anyone. So if that be the case, students, do you know what will happen? The bank will then be liable for the penalty, which will range from rupees 100 per day. Which will range from rupees 100 per day, students. So keep that particular point in mind. 100 per day is the kind of the penalty that would be levied on this particular bank account, which was not furnished by the bank to whom the notice under section 133 was being given. Okay, so just like that, any person who makes a default of section 133, they will have to face the music, because then the penalty would be a daily penalty and the amount of the penalty is rupees 100 per day. Yes, it's only in India that notices that you're talking about it, because these things can only be given in India by the department. Okay, if outside India, if you want to call for the information, then it has to enter through the treaty, and the CBDT will have to notify the secretaries who will call for these information, or the income tax authorities who will call for these information. So that is as per the treaties and other things, other dialogues through which these particular informations are being called upon. Now let's look upon to this one now, students, quickly. Here, question 235. Hotel and hotels were asked by the income tax officer to furnish the details of all such tourists who stayed in their hotel and has paid a bill amount in excess of rupees 10,000. Students, they have not furnished the requisite information in spite of various reminders, so they should be ready for what? Ready for the penalty of rupees 100 per day till the time the failure continues. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Shall we proceed further now, students? This is what it is. By the way, what is the penalty, students? Any idea? If there is a failure to comply with the provision of 131, what we discussed earlier, like issuing a summons, enforcing the attendance, but that person is not coming, neither he is sending his authorized representative. So in that case, if there is a failure to comply with the notice of 131, students, then what is the amount of penalty that will be imposed? The amount of penalty in that particular case, students, will be flat rupees 10,000. Would be how much? Flat rupees 10,000. Yes, Prem. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Now then, if you all are through, come to this 123B. Now, students, please read this particular part. I'll ask you one question. 133B, quickly. No. That 131 would be 10,000 flat. There is no day basis penalty. The 10,000 for 131 default, if you don't comply to it, it is 10,000 flat. Okay, whereas over here, in the case of 133, if you don't comply with the same, then the penalty amount is rupees 100 per day. Read this one, friends? If you read it, please let me know, because I'll have to ask a question to it. Students, is this 133B a provision? Yeah. For 131 that you are talking about it, the penalty is 10,000 rupees, and for 133 that you are mentioning it, the penalty is 100 rupees per day. Now the point that, students, here we need to discuss is this. Be careful now, students. The point that we need to discuss over here is this, that, are you getting this one, students? What is the point? The point is this, that, is this a survey? Is this section, students, a section for survey? This is the issue under consideration. What is your take? Is this a section for a survey, students? Can I say this to be a survey? Answer is no. Yes, you can say door to door, but this cannot be referred as survey. You would have noticed one thing in the entire question. In the entire question, the word survey is not there. In the entire question, the word survey is not there. Because why I'm saying so? Because many a times, see, right now you know what is the section going on. But how to identify in the examination that this is not a section relating to survey? More so, the nature of power attracts similar. They are quite similar to each other. The nature of power is quite similar to each other. That is something that you all are aware. Isn't it? Now, the second and the more important point, students, in this case is that if you see over here, the income tax department, can enter into the place of business, students. Can you see that? The income tax department, students, can enter into the place of business, and they can enter within the business hours. Even that is what is sorted out. But my question is that, can they impound the books? Can they impound the books in this case? And the answer, students, is no, they cannot. Students, no, they cannot impound the books of accounts in this particular case. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. They cannot impound the books of accounts, students, in this particular case. Is that clear, students, in this regard? So no impounding of the books of accounts is possible. The impound of books, I have already told you, can only be done in section 133A. Can be done only in the section 133A. And what is 133A? The 133A provision is the provision for survey. The 133A, students, is the provision related to survey. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. Fine. And that exactly the point. So in the examination, how do I see that this question where there is no reference at all of 133B, how do I identify that this question is 133B and not 133A? Because if it is a survey, students, if it is a survey, then in that case you should always keep in mind that the survey, you can impound the books of accounts. And the one common feature with 133B is that if you are entering into any place of business, then it has to be during the business hours. If you are entering into any place of business, then it has to be during the business hours. Okay. The point of 133A is to ensure that the department gets much wider power to impound the books. Now you may be thinking then, sir, if that is the case, then why don't the department exercise 133A? Why they have to go to 133B? Because at least in 133A, if he would like the books, he can impound the books. Yes, to that extent, friends, you may be fair and right also. But be careful. If you want to take up 133A without following this procedure, which we have discussed right now. So if you have to go with 133A, students, you should always then get a approval from the higher authority. So if you have the approval from the higher authority, students, only then you can do the survey and only then you can impound the books of accounts. But where you don't have here, see, generally you will seek an authority when there is a huge case involved, wherein you can show to your bosses that, look, if I do the survey, this is the benefit which we will be getting it if we do the survey in this context. So that will enable these particular authority to go ahead and do the survey. But 133B, students, is what? 133B is not like an investigation or any inquiry. This is just for the purpose of gathering the evidences. That's all of it. So therefore, the fundamental difference lies in the fact that the provision of section 71, this particular thing, herein the provision would be applicable, 131, the provision would be applicable only if, so the provision would be applicable herein only if, of 133A would be applicable only if you have taken the prior approval. Whereas in 133B, the prior approval is not required. And that is the reason why the assessing officer find it very convenient to take what? The route of 133B if it is a normal kind of what? If the normal kind of inquiry that the AO has to make, then it is better to take for 133B, because if you do 133A, then you need to inform whom? Inform the higher authority that, look, I want to go to for doing a survey. This is the reason why I have. This is the reason that I have, and based on this reason, I want to do the survey. And if the higher authority is satisfied with the reason that is available before you, they definitely may grant you the permission to go ahead and do the survey. The only advantage of survey under 133A vis-a-vis this 133B is what? In the case of survey, you can impound the books, which cannot be done in the case of 133B. Okay, I hope that all of you are clear with this for now. Any doubt, students? So, if you all are clear, students, in this context, please see the provision. Now here in 133B, what the assessing officer wants to take away the books of accounts kept at the order. This is what the wrong that the AO. This is what the wrong that the AO is trying to do. This is what is the wrong that the AO is trying to do, and we should avoid the AO to do such wrong, isn't it? And that's exactly the point. So students, just read this provision out quickly. Through with this one? Perfect. So students, we can now look upon, see now 133A question itself, you will come to know. In this 133A question itself, students, you will come to know. So nowhere in the question they are referring, the beauty of these questions are that nowhere in the question they are referring whether it is 133 or 133B. Nowhere, students. Nowhere in the question, students, they are referring that it is 133A or 133B. Did you witness that? So they are not mentioning in the question at all about 133 or 133B. So you have to pick up from the language. So see the language which is used in 133A. Students, so what they are using the language is, the AO within his jurisdiction surveyed a popular cyber cafe at 12 o'clock at night for the purpose of collecting information which may be useful for the purpose of the Income Tax Act 1961. Okay. Here itself they have used the word survey. So what are the words which actually creates a distinction? One is the fact that they are using the word survey itself. Now, as I told you, students, the survey, if you want to do under 133A, then you will have to enter. Students, by when you need to enter? Enter during the business hours. During the business hours. Now, as far as the hotel is concerned, the business hours can also be at night, isn't it? And therefore, the survey can be done in that circumstances as well. So, students, over here as well, what we will say would be that in this context, that the survey is there. What are the other words? AO wanted to take away with him the books of accounts kept at the cyber cafe. So these are the words, students. These are the words. Okay. But in previous particular question, students, there is no reference at all of the word survey. So they are just saying that for the purpose of, in the previous question, that for the purpose of collecting the information which may be useful for the proceeding under the Act, the AO wants to visit the premises. Okay, visit the business premises of the SSE. That is the only reference that they are giving it to you. So therefore, in that particular case, you will say that this will not be considered as a case of a survey. This will not be considered, students, as what? As the case of a survey, students. Okay, so that is one of the two distinctions which I have told you. Just keep in mind, because they are not giving you the reference of the section number. They are simply giving you the statement. On the basis of the statement, you have to decide finally whether it would be a case of 133 or whether it would be a case of 133B. With that now, students, Doctrine of Merger. Doctrine of Merger, students. Now, there are two types of merger, students. I think that will come later on. But still, since it has come, let's look upon to this. Students, there are two types of merger. One is the doctrine of partial merger. Now, in the case of the partial merger, students, you may be aware of that. In the case of the partial merger, students, the AO, students, say for example, they have passed the order under 143, regular assessment order. Now, on say A and B, associate has gone for the appeal. Okay, appeal before the CIT appeals. Now, during the pendency, herein, say for example, CIT wants to revise the order revise the order of the CIT. During the pendency, students, the CIT wants to revise the order of the AO. Okay, so you need to ask the question, students. The revision that is done, revision under which section, students? This is the most critical question that you have to ask. Revision under which section, students? So therefore, again, two sections are given to you. One is section 263. And another section 264. Now, in 263 revision by the CIT, you may be aware, we have DO, Doctrine of Partial Merger, and here in 264, students, we have got what? Doctrine of Complete Merger, DOCM and DOPM. Now, what is this DOPM? As you may be aware, students, are you aware of this? So DOPM, students. No T actually I'm just trying to adjust. Just a second. Ashish Vidyarthi? Who's Ashish Vidyarthi? Fine, students. Change the chair actually. Some discomfort is there. Anyway, students. So, doctrine of partial merger. Please take a note of it. Please take a note of it, students. As per DOPM, the matters which are considered or decided in the appeal, no revision shall be made in respect of such matter. No revision, students, in respect of such matter. That is the jurisdiction of the revision revisionary proceedings, shall be restricted, students. Shall be restricted only on those matters which are not considered or decided in the appeal. Take a 5 minutes break, Prem. I just have to 5 minutes break. I'll just fit this particular chair first. This chair is giving some issue. So students, we'll start with this one only. I think there is an issue on this. I'll get it rectified by the next session or so. So this is your doctrine of partial merger. So what we have said in this regard, students, that as per the doctrine of partial merger, the matters which are considered or decided in the appeal, no revision shall be made in respect of such matter. That is, the jurisdiction of revisionary proceedings shall be restricted only on those matters which are not considered or decided in the appeal. Okay, so that is what the jurisdiction of revisionary proceedings would be. Now, in this context, students, if it is a complete merger, students, then in that case, what happens? So if it is a complete merger, students, then what happens, Prem, in this case? Then in that situation, you will not be in a position to revise any matter, students. Then in that particular case, you will not be eligible to revise upon on any matter. And that exactly is the point. So please make a note of it. In this context, so you write here in this case, as per DOCM, if any matter of the order of the CIT, of the AO is considered in the appeal, then the CIT cannot revise the order of the AO even in respect of those matters which are not in the appeal. Okay, so that is the distinction between the two, the doctrine of partial merger and the doctrine of the complete merger. Keep this point in mind, friends, because this is a very favorite question of the ICI. Very frequently it been asked. Couple of questions are going to come right now. We will see those questions also and we'll work it out. Okay, let's take the discussion further. Have you copied? Copied on this one, students. So now let's have a look on this particular aspect. Students, now this is really a great question. Power of search under section 132 and the consequences thereon. Students, whenever the search take place under section, whenever the search take place, see one thing what happens is that obviously the scope of search is massive. You may be all aware of that. The search can be the search can take place in the residential premises also, in the official premises, in the factory, any place which primarily any place could be subject matter of search. Now obviously students, whenever we go to those particular places, say for example the residential premises of the SSC, we will find these money, bullion, jewelries and all, isn't it? Now one thing is for sure, that these particular asset item may have been acquired through the black money. Do you all agree to this one? These particular asset item, students, would have been acquired by the SSC through the black money. And because that they have been acquired, students, through the black money, therefore what? Because that they have been acquired, students, through the black money, in this particular case, what we will say, students, we shall say this, that the fact that they have been acquired out of the black money, students, therefore what, students? Therefore in this particular case, students, we will say what, students? The asset would be seized. But tell me one thing here, will we have any documents? Will we have any documents, students? Any documents to share on this particular part? In this context? And the answer, students, is no. We will not have any documentation, students, in this regard. Isn't it? No document, students, would be there. No documents would be there. Meaning, see, because these people, students, these people, students, would be as you can see, students, the fact that no documents would be there, therefore, students, what we will say in this context? Indeed, students. Just read this, Prem, herein. Just read this particular part. So if you see, students, frame over here, one thing is established, which is that one thing, students, is established, and that is about the fact that there will not be any documents. There will not be any documents at all to support that these assets So in this particular situation, students, the entire aspect would be, as you all know, that the department students could not support. The department in this particular case could not support on what, students? They will not be in a position to support upon the fact that these assets belongs to the SSC. These assets belongs to the SSC. Isn't it? The department could not support that these assets belong to the SSC. Do you also agree to this one? And therefore, students, if they cannot support that this belongs to the SSC for the want of the evidence, for the want of the invoices, for the want of the evidences, or for the want of the invoices, then in that particular case, students, in that particular case, so in this particular context, students, the department which we can see over here, they will not be in a position to support on what, students? They definitely will not be in a position to support that these assets belong to the SSC. And if the department cannot support that these assets belongs to the SSC, primarily, then we also are aware of the fact that, students, that they asset, if you cannot say that it is just found in the premises of the SSC. See, one thing is there, just think logically. A police officer who is catching the thief, it is the police officer who has to establish that he has done the theft. Just because I caught you, that does not mean you're a thief. It is not like this. You would also know, students, that supposingly I hold someone. Now, is it that because I have caught you, therefore it is assumed that you are a thief? Now you establish that you are not a thief. Is that the way the proceedings happen? That just because I caught you, therefore it is assumed that you are a thief. Now you primarily, you will now tell me that you are not a thief. Because I caught you, therefore you are a thief. Now you tell me that you are not a thief. Is it that the way? The onus is on the person who is making the allegation. The onus is always on the person who is making the allegation, students. Is that clear to all of you? The onus is always on the person who is making the allegation, students. And I think that point is well taken by all of you. Isn't it? So if the owner is the person who is, that onus is on the person who is making the allegation, then in that case he have to prove it. Now tell me one thing, the department, can they prove it because they are found in that asset, are found in the premises of the SSC? Will the department be in a position to prove that it belongs to the SSC? Answer is no. The department will not be in a position to establish or prove that this belongs to the SSC because there is no invoice documents and all. And therefore, in that case, if they cannot prove it, then they cannot seize it. If they cannot prove it, therefore they cannot seize it. And that is the reason why, students, one section is introduced in 132 which shifts the burden of proof on whom? How beautifully this section has been introduced. It shifts the burden of proof on whom? On the SSC. On the SSC. And what is the burden of proof? It says that because these things are found in your place, it is assumed that, it is assumed what? It is assumed that it is belonging to you. Unless there are circumstantial evidence which suggests otherwise. Again, I am repeating, students. Because that students, now you read this question, all of you. So students, in this particular context, students, if you all will see very, very carefully, let's, students, if you all will see over here in this context. So sorry, here in Prem just stuck with this. Yeah. Now if you see in this context, students, herein, the point which has been given to us over here is that the papers were found in the drawer of an accountant. The paper was found in the drawer of an accountant relating to Sri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating details of various business transactions. However, Ram Bharosa Limited is not having any direct or indirect connection of any nature with these transactions. And Sri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, and its directors. Okay. So Ram Bharosa, students, is not having any direct or indirect connection of any nature with these transactions. Now you tell me one thing. In this case, it is very clear that, students, the business transaction which is being conducted over here, since the papers are being found in the drawer of an accountant relating to Sri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating details. In this context, students. So in the first case, Prem, if you see what they have said, papers were found in the drawer of an accountant relating to Sri Krishna Limited, Mumbai, indicating details of various business transactions. That is what they have mentioned. However, Ram Bharosa Limited is not having any direct or indirect connection of any nature with these transactions. So you tell me, here the evidence is very clear that it belongs to whom? Is it belonging to the SSC, Ram Bharosa Limited? No. The paper relating to the papers which was there in the drawer of the accountant was relating to Sri Krishna Limited. What did I told you some time back? That whatever is found in your premises, it will be assumed that it belongs to you. Unless the circumstantial evidence shows otherwise. Students. Isn't it? So the circumstantial evidence, if it shows otherwise, then in that particular case, it will be considered that way. Fine. So this is how it has to be considered. So students, what we will say, that here it belongs to Sri Krishna Limited. Fine. Now you tell me one thing. In this case, whether it will be given to Sri Krishna Limited, students, back to Sri Krishna Limited, whether this particular asset, because the documents belong to Sri Krishna Limited, isn't it? So in that situation, whether it will be returned back? No, it will be given to the assessing officer having the jurisdiction over Sri Krishna Limited. Isn't it? So therefore, yes, indeed. Therefore, friends, yes, indeed, that is how the things has to be looked upon. And yes, as you students are saying, it will be not handed over to Krishna, but to the AO of the Sri Krishna. The AO of Sri Krishna Limited. Is that clear to all of you students? Fine. So therefore, this is what it would be. Now let's see the second one. Jewelry worth rupees 5 lakhs from the bedroom of one of the director, which was claimed by him to be of his married daughter. Now you can claim anything. The fact that it is there in your premises, you can claim that it is of my friend, it is of my uncle, he has just kept it, he will come back and he will take away. These things can be spoken about it. But I told you that is there any document or any other evidence which can establish that it belongs to her? Just merely the statement will not suffice here. Merely the statement will not suffice. So it will be, you have to establish, because the burden is on you. So you will have to establish that it belongs to your daughter. Belongs to your daughter. The word is belong, students. It is a very word which is requiring a lot of documentation, evidences to support the entire aspect. I hope that all of you are clear with this one, students. So students, this is how it will be considered. Now coming to herein, in this context, students, which you can say it over here. What does it say in this context, students? In this context, students, that papers recording certain transaction of income and expenses having direct nexus with the business of the company for the period from 16th April 2017 to the date of search, students. To the date of search. So students, in this context, what will be the situation? What is your take in this regard, students? Indeed the case. So students, in this context, we can say, and as you all have put it, that students, that the so as per 132(1)(a), so this is the same thing, students. 132(1)(a), presumption would be required. Presumption in respect of papers also. Students, not only papers, whatever is written there, the handwriting is deemed to be belonging to you. That sort of a question, because in one of the attempt, I remember they were so specific, and they were old attempt, 2007, 2008. In that attempt, students, they were asking the question that there was handwriting, there was a signature of that particular person. So whether the handwriting and signature also will have the same sort of a linkage, students? Will that also have the same sort of linkage with the handwriting and the signature? Again, the answer is yes. So all the handwritings, all the signatures which are being there will have the same sort of a linkage in this regard as well. So we will say in this case the same thing in this regard, students. Now, release of the seized asset, students. The next question in this case, Prem, we will have a 15 minutes break at 4 o'clock. Okay, 15 minutes. Now, let's have a look to question number 240. Question number 240, students. Cash of rupees 25 lakhs were seized on 12th of September 2021 in a search conducted as per section 132 of the Act. Students, so this is a cash of 25 lakhs which was seized on 12th of September 2021 in a search which was conducted under section 132 of the Act. The SSC moved an application on, the SSC students has moved an application on 27/10/2021 to release such cash after explaining the source thereof, which was turned down by the department. So students, the department has turned down that particular thing. The SSC seeks your opinion on the following issues. Can the department withhold the explained money? If yes, then to what extent and up to what period? So if you see over here, what they are trying to tell you, can the department withhold the explained money, students? Can they do it, students? What is your take on that? In this case, and the answer is no, students. They will not be in a, if say what happens when the search happens, students. Whenever the search happens, many a times it is seen that the SSC loses its mind. And whatever, see, what you can seize, one more thing, students, which you should be very clear about it. What can be seized is only what? What can be seized, students, is only those assets which has been acquired from. Only those assets which has been acquired out of what, students? Only those assets which has been acquired out of black money. But if the asset, students, which has been acquired out of the tax paid income, can that also be seized? To that the answer is no. If the asset has been acquired out of the tax paid income, students, then that cannot be seized. Keep this particular point always in mind. Then that cannot be seized. Okay, so therefore, students, what has happened over here is, this that. What has happened, students, over here, students, is this that the SSC generally, as I told you, that whenever the search happens, they loses their mind. And they are not even in a position to give the explanation even in respect of those assets which they have acquired out of the tax paid income. And since no explanation was furnished, the department seizes them. And after the asset has been seized, thereafter the realization comes that the department has also taken those assets. The department has also taken those assets. The department has also taken those assets for which, students, the explanation, students, has been given by the SSC. So now that the SSC will approach the department, and the SSC will approach the department and will tell the department that, look, some of the assets that you have taken, which you have seized, has been acquired out of the tax paid income. So what is the recourse available to the department, students, in this case? The recourse that is available to the department in this case is this that. Be careful, students. What is the recourse available to the department in this case? So this is the recourse. That the first, be careful herein, the department has to release it. Department will have to release it. But here the department will do what? Students, here, be careful. First of all, by the way, by when the assessee has to make the application, where he is giving the explanation about the nature and the source of the asset, he need to do it within 30 days from the end of the month in which the asset was seized. That is also one of the point. Okay, he need to say the nature and the source, as I told you, that way. So once he makes the application within 30 days from the end of the month in which the asset was seized, thereafter, students, thereafter in this case, the assessing officer may, with the prior approval of the principal chief commissioner, yes, Prem, this was then the assessing officer he has to take up the prior approval. Now see how the law favors the department. How the law favors the department, students, you can see for yourself. So here it is written very clearly that then the assessing officer may, with the prior approval of the principal chief commissioner or the chief commissioner or the principal commissioner or commissioner, release the asset after recovering the existing liability under the Income Tax Act 1961. So in fact, just imagine this. They want to recover the existing liability also. That is a department for you, students. That is a department for you. They want to recover what, students? They want to recover the existing liability which is there under the Income Tax Act as well. What do you mean by existing liability, students? Existing liability would mean that whatever is a liability which is already have materialized. Whatever is the liability which has already have materialized, students. That is what is referred as an existing liability. That is what is referred as an existing liability. Okay, so therefore, like for example, for old assessment year, order was passed, demand was served, but the assessee is yet to make the payment, isn't it? So that is the example of an existing liability. So before they release that asset for which the assessee has made the application, they will definitely have the right to use that asset to adjust against the existing liability, and the balance would be released. So students, this is what it is in this context. Now that is what, leave the interest part, students. Just leave the interest part. Only this much part is sufficient. Leave the interest particular portion, calculations and all. Now please come to question 241 over here. The search was conducted under section 132. Break, Prem, I'll give it at 4 o'clock. Okay, we'll take 15 minutes break then. And after that, there would be an hour lecture, 1 hour lecture. Okay, so thereafter it would be 1 hour lecture. And then at night, Prem, at 10 o'clock. The last lecture tonight will be 10 o'clock. Don't worry, only today is so hectic. After today, tomorrow onwards, it will be normal lectures. Only one lecture I will have it. Okay? Because I just want to finish off this particular case. Because tomorrow when I start, I want to start with the business and profession and all, the practical part. So therefore, otherwise I just don't want to stretch for this. I just want to finish off this, and then we can start with PGBP and the other particular areas, which I have already told to all of you. Now, students, question 241. Tomorrow timing, tonight timing is 10 o'clock. Tomorrow I will just let you know. Tomorrow it would be 1 day break because there is a CA day tomorrow. So there are some Unacademy sessions for the CA day. So I would be occupied on that CA day thing. So day after tomorrow. Okay. So now, students, let's come back to this. Question number 241. A search was conducted under section 132 in the business premises of Sanskar on 5th May 2021. The search was concluded in executing the last of the authorization on search. Students, this is now old actually. Because delete this particular question, students. Because this is on the... Take up directly now question number 242, students. Question 242. Can the SSC's application for adjustment of tax liability on income surrendered during search by sale of seized gold bar be entertained where the assessment has not been completed? Students, do you know this is actually a recent particular incident that has happened? And this could be an expected question also. Recent incident that has happened. In this election of, I think UP election, I have read, we have seen in the television, there was one particular person in whose premises the income tax raid took place. He was a scent dealer, the perfume dealer. There the income tax raid took place. Remember that? It was very popularly put across in the news channel. So what happened was that obviously in his premises, the huge cash was, premises after premises cash was there. In fact, friends, you should know one thing. This is actually, see, this is a huge, as we see how the things happen, then you realize what sort of law is there and now how the law has been made in such a way that actually it helps this sort of a situation. I'll tell you what happened. So here it was a case wherein I think huge amount of cash, I think his many rooms were only of the cash. The things was seized, isn't it? The things was seized from his premises. Actually, that person, I can now know that this money was not of that person. Obviously, we know he was only made as a medium. It is a hawala particular money which was being brought in, and it was used for the elections and all. Obviously, because you have to cover a lot of election rallies, so those rallies are done in the cash and all. So accordingly, these cash were being used, students, in those cases for the purpose of funding the election rallies and all. So now what happened, students, in this context? So in this particular context, with the election rally across it, so obviously this was at a very critical time the search took place, and therefore they have seized the entire cash. Now what happened is that particular party, they got stuck with the fundings and all. And remember, he gave a statement. This person, when I saw in the TV, what is the statement that he gave? He said that whatever tax that you want to recover, you recover it and give me my return money back. Whatever tax that you want to recover, see the desperation at which he has said this statement, that whatever tax that you want to recover it now and give my money back. I don't want to keep my money with you. And why he is so desperate to get the money back? Because the election is going on. He wants those money, in fact, for the election purpose. So that was his primarily the desperation. But the question therefore is whether the law, will they allow to return the money just because he say that, okay, take some 30% or 40% like that and give me my balance money? Will the law allow him the release of that particular money? Just have a look, students. What is the situation? The law says that no, the money will not be released. See, that is the foresighted of law. Law says that the money would be released. Not that you tell us that 40%, 50% you take as a tax and whatever it is and return me the balance amount. We will not return you the balance amount. The money will be released only after the assessment is completed. And you can just imagine, assessment is completed means wait for 1 more year. 1 more year means by the time the election is over. Election is over means the party is done and dusted. And that exactly the situation that has happened. See, you don't realize these things when you actually read the law, but when you see those things practically how it is moving around, then you realize that see how important was for that person or for that party primarily to get that money at that time. And therefore he said that you take the taxes and get me my money back. I want my money back. But does the law permit to return the money just on the basis of an ad hoc amount of the taxes and all? Answer is no. The money will only be returned after the assessment is completed. After the assessment is completed, that is the law for you. I also never have this clarity, but now after linking that incidents with this, now I got the clarity that even though he say take 50% and return me the balance, the law will say wait, what is the hurry? Why you are so much getting desperate? Primarily, we will return as and when the assessment is completed. And by the time the assessment is completed, the elections are over. Isn't it? And that exactly is the game, students. So this is how the laws are being framed. And that's the beauty of this particular thing. Somebody who has made this law have imagined these all angles and all. And that exactly is the game, students. So students, this is what it is. Now, looking into this question, student, question number 243. Just read it once. It's a simple one. This is a PAN kind of a question. Last question which has been there. $10 more, then I'll just give the away. Only 10 minutes. I'll just do one particular thing because I just wanted to finish off that thing and then we'll take a break. Are you all through with this one, students? So now, rectification, appeals and revision, students. Again, this is a very important case law. A topic wherein one question is always asked. One question, students, is always asked from this topic, isn't it? Rectification, appeals, revision and rectification. So students, what exactly is the game of this particular topic? Be careful. The first question which you can see in respect of the rectification, appeals and revision, they say that rectification of assessment order under section 154. Rectification of the assessment order under section 154. So here, if you see very carefully, there actually no question came. The problem was that there no question came. So therefore, what is that? Only the concept is what we are explaining of the faceless. Unfortunately, the question is not there at all. One theory question was there in your RTP, which was something, any case was there. So nothing which has been there, but maybe towards the end I will just cover it up couple of things. But as such, no compiler question that we have got. Anyways, let's see. I'll just do couple of quick important revision of the points of some faceless assessment, but I'll do it towards the end. Okay, because in any case we don't have any data bank, and even in the MCQ also I have not seen any faceless question. The ICI MCQs and the case studies also don't have any coverage on the faceless part, isn't it? Anyways, but we'll still try to cover up couple of 2-3 points. So maybe half an hour I'll just give it towards the end. Maybe by looking into the questions which are there, I'll just relook again the topic. If something more I can find out worth discussing apart from the conventional discussion, we will take that question also into account. Now students, rectification, appeals and revision. So rectification of assessment order under section 154. Now students, one point which I just wanted to share, please copy it on this notes. This is very important. So far as rectification is concerned, students, so rectification, students, rectification of the mistake First of all, I'll write rectification by the ITA. What is the full form of ITA? Income tax authorities. Rectification by the income tax authorities. So rectification by the income tax authority of the mistake, which is apparent from the record. Of the mistake which is apparent from the record, students. Okay. Now this rectification can be on what you can do the rectification, students. So three things. Order passed under the Act. Order which is passed under the Act. The second one is, students, the intimation under section 143(1). The intimation under section 143(1). And the third one, students, is, what is the third one, students? Is about the intimation sent, the intimation in consequence of the TDS and TCS statement filed. Students, remember the TDS and TCS statements are to be filed. You all are aware about this one. In this context, so therefore, in this context, Through with this one. Now the next and the last particular point, students, that has been there over here is Nasimuddin no, not 5. All are available. Tomorrow, Nasimuddin, message me. I'll just find it out. Tomorrow, Nasimuddin. Okay. So, in fact, today I'm going to complete this assessment procedure, rectification and all. And tomorrow, no, not tomorrow, day after tomorrow, I'm going to start PGBP. PGBP I'm going to starting. So, if possible, Naseem, attend live. Prem, definitely I'm also intending to come. Let's see. When that time comes, definitely I'll be there. I'll try to see if this attempt is possible post-result. Prem. If post-result is possible, then definitely I will. Yeah, catch up with PGBP, Naseem, and watch this in recorded mode. Fine. Definitely, Prem. If invited, definitely I'll be there. We shall connect on this one, on this particular part. Now, the last question herein is that what is important is that the mistake should be apparent from the record. This is the last point, students. This is the last point, students. The mistake should be the rectification. Can you see that? The rectification by the income tax authority of the mistake which is apparent from the record. Now, therefore, the question is, what is apparent from record? This exactly is what need to be answered. Students, this exactly is what need to be answered. So, there are two issues only, students. Only two issues are there. And we need to answer only this. So, only two issues are there, students. And what is that? The issues are, point number 1, whether a retrospective judgment, students, whether retrospective judgment, retrospective amendment, you can say, retrospective amendment, can that be the ground for the purpose of rectification? What is your take, students, in this? Whether the retrospective amendment, students, can that be the ground for the purpose of, can that be the ground, students, for the purpose of the rectification? So, students, be careful. You should understand the logic behind that. This is very tricky and critical part. Students, once supposing an order was passed saying that the expenditure is allowed. Yes. Supposingly, the order is passed saying that the expenditure is allowed. AO has passed the order. Then subsequently, students, there is an amendment which is made in the law which says that no, it is disallowed. Amendment of the law says what, students? It is disallowed. And that amendment has been made, students, with retrospective effect. That amendment in the law, students, has been made retrospective effect, students. That amendment in the law has been made from retrospective effect, students. Are you getting this one now? So my question to all of you is, in this particular case, students, you only tell me this, that don't you now think that allow, because it is retrospective, it means from the back date, this is a law. From the back date, this is a law. And therefore, anything which is allowed is an error, is a mistake then. It is an error. Anything, because it is backdated, and that is a law from backdated. So therefore, anything which is allowed in between thereafter, it is a mistake. All of you will agree to this one. And is the mistake apparent? How do we know it is apparent? Students, we would know that it is apparent or not. Just ask yourself. Just ask yourself, students, can anyone challenge now? Can anyone have two opinions on the amendment which is made retrospective? Can they have two opinions to allow or disallow? Can they have this particular opinion that I should be allowing or disallowing? Can this opinion be framed? Answer is no. There cannot be such two particular scenario. There can only be one scenario. And what is that one scenario? That it has to be disallowed. So apparent means what? There should not be any two views. And if there cannot be any two views on that, it is apparent. And is there any mistake? Is there a mistake? Yes. Why there is a mistake? Because as you all can see that this is a retrospective law. So the law is from backdated, and accordingly, if it is from backdated, anything thereafter, students, whichever has said it is allowed is having a mistake, and because the mistake is apparent, and accordingly the amendment needs to be made, the rectification needs to be made. Although, students, it is unfortunate, you will also see that, sir, it is very harsh, isn't it? It is very harsh. I admit that, students, but can't help it. So is life, students. So is articleship, isn't it? Articleship is also harsh. Life is also harsh, students. That exactly is the point. Okay. Now, coming to the next particular point. Students, supposingly, students, the law, there is a subsequent Supreme Court judgment. Let's take the same particular thing, that AO has allowed the deductions and all. AO may have allowed the deduction, and subsequently in somebody's case, articleship is miserable, but that is how it is. Here in, students, subsequently what happened? The Supreme Court have given the judgment. Subsequently, students, the Supreme Court have given the judgment, students. Okay, now the judgment is the judgment says disallowed. What the judgment says, students? Judgment says disallowed. So if the judgment says disallowed, students, then in that case, again the question comes, can that judgment of the Supreme Court be taken for the purpose of starting with the proceedings of rectification? Can that judgment be taken as the basis for the purpose of starting the proceedings of rectification? Now, in that particular context, students, you should always keep in mind this particular point. And what is that? Here, students, you should always keep in mind one particular point, and that is that, students, Supreme Court, does it make a law? Does Supreme Court make a law is the issue under consideration? To that, the answer is no. Supreme Court does not make a law, students. I think all of you are aware of that. What Supreme Court does, students, is this, that it is only interpreting the law. Supreme Court, students, only interprets the law. All of you will agree to this one, isn't it? So if the Supreme Court interprets the law and the Supreme Court says that the expenditure is disallowed, what does it imply, students? Does it imply that the expenditure is disallowed from now? Does it imply that the expenditure is disallowed from now? Does that mean this? That the expenditure has got disallowed from now? No, never. It means that the expenditure is disallowed right from the day when the law existed. It means what? The expenditure is disallowed right from the day when the law existed. And if from that day the law existed, so therefore whosoever would have allowed the deduction, all those cases has a mistake. Isn't it? Now, is the mistake apparent? So I told you, what do you mean by apparent? How do you know it is apparent or not? You have to ask the question, can there be two views now on this? Supreme Court saying it is disallowed, can there be now two views on this? Answer is no. And the fact that there cannot be any two views on this, therefore we will say that, what is that, students? We will say that based on the Supreme Court judgment, the rectification can be undertaken. Based on the Supreme Court judgment, can the rectification be undertaken? And the answer is yes, students. I hope that every one of you are clear with this one. All of you. And that exactly is the point, students. So this is how the things has to be looked upon very carefully in this context. So we are done with this particular part, students. Congratulations. Now, students, herein, just very quickly, can you read this one, students? Just read frame once and then we'll close this. And then take a break of 15 minutes and then we'll resume. Quickly, but read this one. I will just see if it is the same link. Mostly it will be the same link. But I'll just confirm on this. Or else I'll share with you. Jurisdictional High Court, but still that High Court part is debatable. But yes, you can say that if it is a jurisdictional High Court, then it is binding. One can say because it is a jurisdictional High Court, then if it is a Bombay High Court judgment, then it is binding on the state of Maharashtra and Goa. So for those cases in Maharashtra and Goa on whom the order was passed, which was against what the Bombay High Court has ruled later on, then in respect of those order, there is a mistake. And the fact that the Bombay High Court judgment is binding on the state of Maharashtra and Goa, therefore in that case, it is apparent. So one way we can always prove that it is an apparent mistake for that jurisdictional High Court, and maybe thereafter you can say that yes, there could be a consequence. And what is the consequence? I hope that all of you are aware of this one now. So with this, students, with that, you can take a 15 minutes break and then we'll resume the session accordingly. See you then, students, after 15 minutes. Take care. Hello, students. Hello, students. So, students, let's start on this one. The next particular question which has been there. So, let's see the next particular question, students, in this context. So, this is a question herein. So, consequence on the abatement, student. So, here we have done this particular part. Consequence on the abatement of proceedings before the settlement before the settlement. Before the settlement, student. So, question 245 is there over here. Now, settlement commission, students, leave it because settlement commission no longer is there in this regard. Now, we don't have a settlement commission, students. I think all of you are aware of that also, isn't it? The concept of settlement commission has now become a bygone. Are you aware of this one, students? Earlier, there was settlement commission wherein these things were being considered, but now, students, no longer we consider the settlement commission in this regard. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. So, students, in this context then, let's start the discussion over here. Monetary limit, students. The monetary limit, students, herein. Now, if you see the monetary limit, the monetary bar to file the appeal, and what is the consequence of the same? Monetary bar to file the appeal, and what are the consequences of the same, students? So, here you have to be very careful. What they have said over here is this, that The income tax authority here, students, say for example, as you all will know in this context, the maximum litigant, students, as you all are aware, is the income tax, the department itself. In fact, as you all will know, 70 to 75% of the litigation comes from the income tax department. I think all of you are aware of that. 70 to 75% of the litigation, students, is coming from the income tax department. Are you aware of that, students? And that exactly is the point. So with 70 to 75% of the litigation coming from the income tax department, students, therefore the government has felt that let's try to, what the government students have felt in this regard. So the government students have felt in this regard that let's try to, students, in this particular context, reduce the litigation by keeping a monetary bar. By monetary bar for the department, that if you want to file an appeal, then you need to cross the tax effect should cross beyond that threshold amount. Students, the tax effect should cross beyond the threshold amount, only then we will allow you to, students, only then we shall allow you to, indeed, only then, students, we shall allow you in this kind of a scenario that, yes, students, we shall allow you to thereafter file the appeal before the relevant authority. So they have got three layers. One is the ITAT, High Court and Supreme Court. So if their department wants to file the appeal against the order of CIT appeals before the ITAT, then they have given the monetary limit, how much should be the tax effect, so as to enable them to file the case before the ITAT. Same if you see, it is also for the High Court. For High Court also, students, you will find the similar proposition. You will find the similar proposition for the High Court, and the last also for the Supreme Court. You will find the similar proposition, students. So therefore, in that particular context, we have a similar proposition for the High Court also, that the tax effect should cross that particular threshold amount, and only when the tax effect cross that particular threshold amount, that, students, that the appeal can be filed. Now the question why we are here in this case is that, supposingly for herein the assessee is Mr. A. So Mr. A is assessee in this context, with Mr. A being the assessee, students, in this particular context. Mr. A being the assessee, students, in this particular context. The department could not file the appeal before the say ITAT or High Court, whatever it be, because of the tax effect. So department cannot file the appeal. So what happened was, the CIT appeal gave the deduction, allow the deduction of expenditure A, expenditure X. So there was one expenditure X for which the department has given the deduction, for which the department has given the deduction. Sorry, for which the CIT appeal has given the deduction. Department was aggrieved by this order, but unfortunately the department could not file an appeal before the ITAT. And what is the reason why they could not file the appeal before the ITAT? Because of the tax effect. Because of the tax effect, they could not file the appeal before the ITAT, and accordingly they have to bite the bullet because they could not file the appeal. The reason was the tax effect was not sufficient enough for them to file the appeal before the ITAT. Now what happened thereafter, students, was that there was another Mr. B for whom the same expenditure was there. Same expenditure X was there. Now, in respect of that expenditure X, for them also CIT appeal has allowed the deduction. For them also CIT appeal has allowed the deduction. Now, the department wants to students file an appeal. For this, the department students wants to file an appeal before the ITAT. Now, here the tax effect is available, meaning thereby because the amount of that deduction for B was so huge, the amount for deduction for was so huge, students, that in this particular context, the demand for the expenditure X was so huge that this is precisely the point in this context. So students, over here in this context, over here in this particular context, students, what we will say? We shall say accordingly that can Mr. B argue that look, department, in the case of Mr. A, you could not proceed. In the case of Mr. A, you could not proceed. And because you could not proceed, students, therefore what? Therefore, you will not be allowed. Therefore, you will not be allowed to. Students, you will not be allowed to file the appeal before the ITAT. This argument, is it available or not, students? Is this argument available or not? What is your take, students, in this case? And the answer is no. Just because that they could not fight the case in Mr. A's case because of the tax effect was not crossing the threshold amount. That does not mean that for Mr. any other SSE, for the same issue, they cannot go to the ITAT. They can definitely go to the ITAT, students. They can definitely go to the ITAT. The only factor to be considered over here is what, students? About the tax effect. The only factor that needs to be considered, students, over here is about the tax effect. Is that clear to all of you? So if the tax effect is supportive, then definitely against B, they could file the appeal before the ITAT. Against B, they could file the appeal before the ITAT, students. Now, going to the next particular proposition, students. Going to the next particular proposition. Let's have a next proposition, students, in this case. The next proposition in this case is that, supposingly, students, in the next year, I'm talking about the next year, students, over here. So, supposingly, in the next year, if, as you can see, in the next year, students, the question that arises before all of you is that, can this particular expenditure X, can this particular expenditure X be taken up by, can it be taken up by the department, students? Can it be taken up by the department if in the Mr. A's case only, if in the Mr. A's case only the tax effect is available? If in the Mr. A's case only the tax effect is available, can they take it forward in this regard, students? Please tell me. Can you go for it? And the answer is yes, students. And the answer is yes. So this is the point, students, which has been there over here. This is the point, students, that has been there over here. So just keep that particular proposition in mind. I hope that all of you are clear with this one now. Every one of you. So with that, students, we are done with this particular part. Now let's take it forward over here. Students, please go through this question. Question number 246. Quickly, students, read this one. Question 246. So students, now this is a very important theory, as you all are aware, the concept of the additional evidences and all. One of the most important theory, students, about the additional evidences which has been there. Let's have a look to this particular concept, students, then. Now, here, students, what they are trying to say, examine the circumstances where the applicant shall be entitled to produce what? The additional evidences. Entitled to produce the additional evidences, oral or documentary, before the Commissioner of Income Tax Appeals, other than the evidence produced during the proceedings before the assessing officer. Before what, students? The assessing officer. So this is what the situation is. in this context? So therefore, students, see, what does it imply? Students, what does it imply? It implies is that, hear it, that there were certain expenditure, students, which was being allowed as deduction, which was disallowed by the AO, and for that certain evidences the assessee, now obviously for that, because of the disallowance, the assessee has gone for the appeal. Because of the disallowance, students, the assessee has gone for the appeal, isn't it? Now because of the disallowances, the assessee has gone for the appeal, and now in the appeal, the assessee wants to put up some new evidences which was not there at all earlier. Some new evidences, students, which was not there at all before the AO. So now the evidences the assessee wants to put up before the CIT appeal, which was not there before the AO. So question therefore is, can those evidences be put up before the CIT appeal which was not there before the AO? To that the answer is yes, but there are certain conditions, students. All of you students read this particular it's a theory question, but they have been targeting this theory question for last 4 or 5 times. Quickly, students, theory questions on this one. Four-point students herein. Have you all read this one, students? So what does it imply in this context? Let's take across one by one. The first one, what they are trying to say is this, that here if you see very carefully, students, the very first thing, that where the assessing officer has refused to admit the evidence which ought to have been admitted, means what? Means, students, in this particular case, the AO should have admitted certain evidences which he has not, in fact, which he has not admitted when the assessment was going on. So therefore, because of not adopting those particular evidences, which he should have done it at first place, that will make what, students? That will make the order of this particular AO erroneous. Means thereby the evidences which are there, can that be put up for the very first time? Can those evidences be put up for the very first time before the CIT appeal? Yes, if the evidences that was put up before the AO has not been admitted by him, then in that particular case, those evidences can be put up for the very first time before the CIT appeals. That is point number 1. Point number 2, students. This is important. Students, B and C, you would have realized that it appears more or less the same. Would have got this one, students? B and C, you would have realized that this looks more or less the same. Now, in that particular context, B and C, students, looks to be a case of, B and C, students, looks to be a case of what, students? A case for the fact that same, but they are not the same technically. Why is it so? In the case of B, it is very clearly mentioned that the appellant was prevented by sufficient cause from producing the evidence. Which he was called upon to produce by the assessing officer. Isn't it? So, where the appellant was prevented by sufficient cause from producing the evidence which he was called upon to produce by the assessing officer. That is what it is so far as point number B is concerned. Meaning thereby, say for example, the assessing officer has asked for excise records. Students, the assessing officer has asked for excise records. So, excise record should have been furnished. Isn't it? But what has happened, students, is that in this particular context, these excise records, students, unfortunately, these excise records which was there, unfortunately was being seized by the excise department. And because they were being seized by the excise department, the assessee could not furnish those records before the AO. So what we can say? Now here was therefore the AO called upon the records. The assessee was prevented by sufficient cause to produce those particular evidence. The assessee was prevented by sufficient cause to produce those evidence called upon by the AO. In that particular case, students, what we will say? In that particular case, students, we will say that, what is that, students? We shall say in this regard, students, that the assessee can now file those excise records after it is released by the excise department. The assessee can now file those excise records before whom? Before the ITAT. So before the CIT appeal, So can that now be filed? And the answer is yes. In point number C, students, see what has happened. In point number C, this excise record was not called upon by the AO. In point number C, students, if you would have seen, the excise records are not called upon by the AO, but the assessee still wants to file. The assessee still wants to file these excise records. So although it was not called upon, the assessee still wanted to file these excise records. Who has not called? AO has not called. But assessee knows that this is very relevant and this should be checked. But unfortunately, the assessee could not give to the AO. Why? Because the records were being seized. So now, after the records were released and the case is in appeal before the CIT appeal, the assessee wants to put up those records before the CIT appeal. The assessee wants to put up those records before the CIT appeal. Can he do so? And the answer is yes. He can definitely do this for students, and that exactly is the point. Now coming on the point number D, what is the last point? Here they are saying is this, that where the assessing officer has made the order appealed against without giving sufficient opportunity to the appellant to produce. This has to be produce. To produce the evidence relevant to any ground of appeal. To this assessing. So students, herein, supposingly the assessing officer has called for a laundry list. AO wants a laundry list of your evidences, and he has given you only 2 days time. You said that, sir, I want 15 days time. He said that, no, I will only give you 2 days time. So in 2 days time, you cannot even give a piece of paper. So now that the order was passed and you could not give anything, and then now you go to the CIT appeal and you first tell to the CIT appeal that, sir, this is what the AO has called as a list of evidences to be filed before him, and for which he has only given me 2 days. Only given me 2 days. And I required 15 days time, which he has not given me at all. And therefore now, because I was not given a sufficient opportunity of being heard, these are the list of the items which I am filing it for the first time before you. Students. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. So now the next particular part, students, which is there. Power of the ITAT to review, recall and rectify its order. Students, quickly run through this one. Now students, if you see over here, power of ITAT to review, recall and rectify its order, what does it imply? Here students, what happens is this, that the appellate tribunal students, as you all know, the order of CIT appeal, please tell me the range of the orders. CIT appeals passes the order, ITAT passes the order, High Court and the Supreme Court. An order passed by the CIT appeal and the ITAT, can we say it is applicable only in the case where the judgment was being made? Can we say so, students? The order of the CIT appeal and the ITAT, students, is applicable only in the case in which the judgment was being given. Do you all agree to this one, students? In this context. So, therefore, we can say that it is applicable only in the case where the judgment was given, students. In this context. So, students, in this scenario, the ITAT primary judgment is always case specific, and the CIT appeal judgment is also case specific. The High Court and the Supreme Court, which has been there, the High Court and the Supreme Court, students, which has been there, you can see for yourself, friends, that their judgment is having a wider reach. Like, for example, High Court judgment is binding on the entire state, and the Supreme Court judgment is binding on the entire country, isn't it? That is one thing we all know about this one. So, High Court judgment on the entire students state, and therefore the Supreme Court is for the entire country. Now, accordingly, the question is, who has got what kind of a power? Now the power of rectification we have discussed just some time back, in which we have said that if there is a mistake which is apparent from record, students, then the same, can that be rectified, students? Please say. If there is a mistake, students, which is apparent from record, then whether the same, can that be rectified? Yes. Who can rectify the apparent mistake? First is, I told you, ITA. In that earlier, just some time back we did, Income Tax Authority. At the same time, even the ITAT, students, be careful. Even the ITAT has the power to rectify the mistake if the mistake is apparent from record. If the mistake is what? If the mistake is apparent from record, students. So if the mistake happens to be apparent from record, then yes, the ITAT in this particular case, can rectify the order. Okay. Now, can they do the review of their order? Now, many students are asking, sir, what do you mean by review? Review, students, means that I am reappreciating the evidences. I am looking into new evidences. I am doing more further inquiry. Those things, is it allowed to the ITAT? Is the power of review allowed to the ITAT? Answer is no. The power of review, students, is not allowed to the ITAT. Be very careful about it. The power of the review is not allowed to the ITAT, students. So therefore, in this context, the power of the review is never allowed in this regard. And that exactly is the point. ITAT or the Income Tax Authority, for them only there is one particular way that they can look back to their own order. Only one particular way that they can look back to their own order. And what is that way? If there is any apparent mistake, students, if there is any apparent mistake in their order, only then they can look back into their order. That's it. Only then they are allowed to look back into their order. Otherwise, it is not possible for them. Otherwise, students, it is not possible for them. I hope that all of you are clear with this one. So this is how it has to be considered. Students, this is how it has to be considered. So only one way that they can look back to their own order, and this is what it is. This is what it is, students. Is that clear to all of you, students? All of you? Fine, students. Now, if you all are clear in this regard, my next, therefore, question in this context is this. Be careful. High Court and the Supreme Court, can they do the review of their own order? Are they allowed to do the review of their own order? To that, the answer is yes. And what is the reason behind that? What is the reason behind doing the review to their own order? And the reason is very clear, students. The High Court and the Supreme Court can do the review of their own order because, what is the reason, students? Because, you know, a wrong judgment of the High Court, the entire state will suffer. That entire state will suffer. And a wrong judgment by the Supreme Court, the entire country will suffer. Do you agree to this one? Wrong judgment by the Supreme Court, the entire country will suffer. And that exactly is the point, students. That exactly is the point. And therefore what, students? Therefore we say what, students? That therefore, students, we say that the ITAT, students, in this particular case, do they have this particular power to do the review? And the answer is, the High Court and the Supreme Court, do they have the power to review? And the answer is yes. They have the power to review for the reason I have already told you now. So, conclusion is like this, that ITAT, High Court, Income Tax Authority and the ITAT, applicability of their order only to the case where the judgment was given. What they can do, can they look back to their order? Only in one case. If there is a mistake apparent in the record, if there is a mistake which is apparent in the record, only for that particular purpose, that the rectification can be done on their order which has been passed. The rectification can be done in respect of the order that they have passed. In respect of the order that they have passed. Fine, students, this is what it will be considered in this regard. Coming on the next particular proposition, students. Coming on the next particular proposition, High Court and the Supreme Court. What did I told you? Because that the range of their or the applicability of or the applicability of their judgment, students, the applicability of their judgment is very extensive. The applicability of their judgment, students, is very, very extensive. Therefore, we will say that the High Court and the Supreme Court judgment, or the High Court or Supreme Court order, is having a wider ramification as compared to the decision given by the ITAT and the CIT appeals. As compared to the decision given by the ITAT and CIT appeals, and hence High Court and Supreme Court are allowed to review their orders. Fine. Now, last point is about the recalling of the order. What do you mean by the term recall, students? So, one more point is there, students, and that point is known as recalling. What is recalling of the order? Recalling of the order, students. What exactly it is? So here you will find that the order is recalled. Here you will find what, students? That there is a recall of order. Students, whenever the decision is passed ex parte, whenever there is an ex parte order which is passed, ex parte means without the presence of the SSC. In such particular case, there is an option. So what happens is that the SSC could not be present on the date of the hearing. The SSC could not be present on the date of the hearing. So if the SSC could not be present on the date of the hearing, then in that particular case, what happens? An ex parte order is what is passed. An ex parte order, students, is what is passed. In case where the SSC could not be present on the date of the hearing. Did you all got this one? So in such particular cases, what did I told you, students? In such particular case, students, what we have said was that indeed so students, in such scenario, as I told you in this regard, that once the ex parte order is passed, the next and the most critical and the important question is that the SSC may have some genuine reason. SSC may have some genuine reason why he could not come to the court on that particular moment. And therefore, he should at least be given one opportunity. So yes, students, he is given one opportunity wherein if he can explain that there was a sufficient cause of not appearing before the court, then in that particular case, an ex parte order passed can be recalled. Ex parte order passed can be recalled. Okay, so therefore, this is also one of the important point that you should always remember. In one of the Supreme Court judgment, students, in Subrato Roy case, are you aware of that judgment, Subrato Roy case? Supreme Court judgment, students, is there in the Subrata Roy case. And what has happened in that? So in that particular decision, students, in the Supreme Court, in that Subrata Roy case, students, here, we have said that, students, what we have said, students, in this context? We have said in this regard, we have said in this context, students, that their junior lawyers of Mr. Subrata Roy, the junior lawyer of Subrata Roy, they appeared in the case. The junior lawyer, students, they appeared in the case. But unfortunately or fortunately, whatever you have to say, the senior lawyer, he missed his flight and he could not land up in Delhi, where the case was being conducted. So the senior lawyer could not attend it, but the junior lawyer, students, the junior lawyer, he was in a position to come across in this case. Junior lawyer were being heard, but the ace was the senior lawyer at the end of the day. The ace in this case was a senior lawyer, students, at the end of the day. So unfortunately, the senior lawyer could not be heard in this particular context. And the case went against the SSC, Mr. Subrata Roy. So later on, Mr. Subrata Roy has filed an application before the High Court, that was Delhi High Court. For what was the application? Application to recall their order. That application which was being filed, students, was for recalling their order. That application was for what? Was for recalling the order. Now, why that application was being filed? The reason was very clear, students. The application was being filed for the recalling of the order in this particular case. For the recalling of the order in this particular case, students. And in this particular context, students. And in this particular context, the order which was being recalled, they have said that the order which was being recalled by the High Court, students, the order which was being recalled by the High Court, it was being said that it is illegal. Why it is illegal? The reason is very clear. How can he recall the order here? How can he recall the order here? At least, is it an ex parte order? First question to be answered is it an ex parte order? Answer is no. Why? Because the junior lawyer of the SSC was being heard. And the fact that the junior lawyer of the SSC was being heard, it cannot be considered as an ex parte order, students. It cannot be considered as an ex parte order, and that exactly is the point. That exactly is the point, students. So here we will say it was being held that the junior lawyers who were there, these junior lawyers were not being were being heard, and hence it is not an ex parte order. And because it is not an ex parte order, the High Court is not having any power to recall their orders. Fine, students. With that, we are done with this particular question. Very important question. Mark this to be most important for November 22 attempt. And if you want, just read it once, students. I think that should be all. And then I'll meet you then at night 10 p.m. I'll meet you at night 10 p.m. students. But just in case any doubt is there, students, do let me know. 2 minutes, I'll just wait. Please have a look. And then tonight 10 p.m. students, we will finish it off this segment, so that day after tomorrow when we start, students, when we start with the practicals. Okay. Students, just if it is 2 minutes left, I'll just make one announcement. Students, last 6 hours is left. Are you aware of that? Please tell your friends and all about the fact that now only last 6 hours is left, students. So therefore, 20% discount on the subscription, students, as you all are aware. So just let them know about it. 30th of June, 27th to 30th of June, students. So 20% discount is there. Last 6 hours is left. It is for the entire CA vertical, foundation, intro and final. It is therefore for the entire CA vertical. Just you need to put up the code CADS. CADS is the code that you need to put so as to get that 20% discount. Got it? Any of your friends, your known, your colleagues, juniors, relatives who are doing CA at any level, please do let them know about it. Please do let them know about it. And as I told you, students, the entire batches is available, be it foundation, be it for November 22, May 23, November 23, or May 24, November 24. All the batches are available in the platform. Just they need to subscribe it. And while taking the subscription, the referral code that they have to put is CADS. With that, students, we'll meet up in the next session now. Fine. Take care, students. Bye-bye.